Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting, Jackson Hewitt Tax Services, Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, and Gettles High Desert Mechanical. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo. We have got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Flagstaff cross-country coach Trina Painter. She'll break down some future goals she has for her program going forward. We'll then be joined by AIA Executive Director David Hines to talk about new recommendations from the AIA for the upcoming fall sports season. But on the other side of this break, we'll be joined by Prescott High School badminton coach Bobbi Yoder. She'll talk about some of the strategies she uses to help ease the transition from JV to varsity. All of that and a whole lot more coming up right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Cottonwood Parks and Recreation and Gettles High Desert Mechanical. I am joined now by Prescott Badminton coach Bobbi Yoder. Coach Yoder, welcome back onto the show.
Thank you. It's good to be back on here.
Well, we're always happy to have you. Coach, fantastic 2020 season. Just want to say, first and foremost, congratulations on finishing a very hectic 2020. I remember our first conversations not too long ago in October and November about this great badminton team, and they continued their good success, finishing 14-0 overall record last year, earned the number 2 seed in the playoffs. Walk me through the rest of the season, Coach.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those things last year. I feel like every team kind of faced it. We weren't sure if we were going to have a season at the beginning, but we were lucky enough to be able to go ahead with it, with a few things in place to try to keep everybody as safe as possible. But, I really have been blessed with this program and these kids that come in here, year after year. It's always a great group of girls, and they work hard, and they basically pick up badminton pretty quick.
Yeah.
From not having much of a background in it, and become dominant and have established that as, in this program. So it was a pretty good season last year. They went through pretty much undefeated all the way through. We didn't have our first loss until the semis, basically, the Final Four round, which unfortunately, that just because of the rankings, that should have been the championship game, but that's just how the rankings go sometimes. But they had a tremendous season, and they earned everything they got, and they really were a top 4 team. So I think they can kind of look back on it, even though it was a tough loss. That there were 3 different positions that, were within points of winning. And that could have just as easily been a different, outcome for us and for Ironwood, but that's just how it goes. So, but I think those girls, that are returning from that team can, they got a taste of it, and they're hungry for it, and they know what they're capable of. And, they've been working hard in the off season again, and, that's their goal, is to try to get back there again. So we'll see.
We'll talk a little bit about those returners here in just a little bit, but you graduated a good core of seniors last year. 3 of the 4 had been a part of the program all 4 years as a freshman, and then, of course, graduating as a senior. Some big names: Christiana Carter, Cassadine Naylor, Emily Nelson, and, of course, Kaylee Crockett, who has come onto the show and spoken about her experiences with the badminton team and soccer as well. We hope Kaylee's doing well. But I just want to ask, what can you say about that group of seniors? A lot of those girls you've seen from the beginning.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's crazy every year. You lose these kids to graduation, and they go on to bigger and better things. And but that really was a great group of girls. Kaylee Crockett ended the season as my number one, and she fought hard in that spot and battled against a lot of the best in the state basically in that position. And she's actually coming back and helping me this year because she's staying local at Yavapai College, so she's going to coach this year. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Emily Nelson was another big one. She ended the season in the 5 spot for us, in singles. But she was a big part of our success in singles and doubles both. And then the other big one really was Cassidy Naylor. She just played doubles for us. Occasionally she played some singles. But again, those are big shoes to fill in all those girls. And but I think they set a good example for all the up and comers. Even though it is big shoes to fill, they set a good example, and those girls are willing and able. So.
You mentioned some of those returners coming back next season, looking to continue the success this program has seen. One of them coming back is Elle Long. She carried a 22-0 record last year as a junior, I believe, in doubles and singles. Who else can we see kind of step up this season?
Elle was definitely big for us last year. She actually started the season in the number 1 spot. And I think the only reason she didn't really stay in the top 1 or 2 spots. She had an injury partway through the season and missed like at least 2.5 weeks of the season. And then when she came back, it just, after coming back after that much time off, you have to kind of start a little lower in the ladder, and was never able to get quite back up there. She was able to come back up to the number 4 spot, and that's where she ended the season. But I expect big things from her again, because she's just an athlete. I mean, all these kids are just athletes. But Nicole Race is another one of my top kids. She's a senior this year, and she's pretty dominant. And she's established herself in this badminton community, and they see her coming because she's got a heck of a smash. And so they're very well aware of my top kids, and trying to plan for them. But Megan Townsend is another big one, and Riley Crockett. Those are probably the biggest 4 and the main returners for us this year, and all got good experience last year, and experience at the state tournament as well. So I really don't know who's going to come out as my number 1 after tryouts, because it really could go 4 different ways in my opinion. So
okay. You mentioned another Crockett joining the team. So Kaylee's sister is on the squad as well. Like we mentioned, you're returning some great players. The JV team, and we gotta also acknowledge the JV team has been absolutely solid for a very, very long time. I mean, I was looking back at the record, and it seems like the JV team, since you took over, has either had they've had a winning record. Whether it's been like 7-5 your first year, or 11-2, 12 and whatever. I mean, it's a really, really strong program. And I want to kind of ask a little bit, how do you sort of ease that transition for the JV players going from JV to varsity? Because, I mean, Coach, the JV team, it translates quite well to the varsity team. We both know it. It's you can see it in the records.
Yeah, so it's the badminton program is unique in that most of these kids have never played before, or if they have, it's maybe in the backyard with their family, or maybe they got it a little bit in like one section of PE in middle school. But most of them have never even picked up a racket, let alone hit a bird before. So there is a big learning curve there. But like I said earlier, just getting athletes in there is the key, because they are athletic, they're motivated, they're competitive, and they have that drive to kind of learn it and perfect it. And so that makes things a little bit easier, and that you have kids eager and willing to learn it, to where you can coach them up and teach them the different, parts of the game. But, these JV players and the alternates, they get to see, an elite varsity team compete day in and day out. And so they learn a lot from them, learn a lot from watching them. And a lot of times we'll, at least once a week, we try to have them, the older girls, the varsity girls work with the younger kids. Cause sometimes some of them, learn by hearing it, and some learn by, doing it, and some learn by seeing it. So it's a lot of different avenues, but, I think they take advantage of all of it, and they just, you get the reps in, and eventually they get to the point where they can, step up and be ready for that varsity level. So,
Coach, like you mentioned, obviously you're getting a lot of people picking up the sport for the first time. I mean, you yourself coming into coaching the program, obviously never really participated in badminton outside of, those summer barbecues where somebody happens to have a badminton and you're smacking the birdie around, not really sure what you're doing, but you're just having some fun. But it seems like, Coach, that learning curve is there's not much of one, because, that transition, like I mentioned with the records, it's obvious that these players, under the guidance of you, have really been able to transition quite well from JV to varsity. Like I mentioned, both programs having significant success. And so going into 2021, where is the focus this offseason, Coach? I mean, where is an area you would like to see this team continue to grow and get better?
Well, I think that's, just it, my big thing over the summer is trying to get those kids that are interested in it in the gym to get them some reps before tryouts roll around, so that they can actually hold their own in a match. Because that's basically how tryouts go. The first day we kind of go through the basics, but then they have to go through and play everybody. Mm-hmm. And then depending on how that win-loss record is, that's how they're ranked for varsity and JV. So, just getting them in the gym and getting them reps and getting them to kind of learn the game a little bit helps them function through tryouts and give them the best shot possible. And then they have their opportunities throughout the season to, every Friday after our first match, we have challenge days, and that's their opportunity to challenge up. If they're improving, it's going to show, and they're going to start taking spots from somebody. So
what are some of those areas that some new badminton players struggle in, Coach?
Well, just the hand-eye coordination.
Okay.
I mean, you'd be surprised on some of my top kids. The first day they stepped foot in the gym, they couldn't even hit the bird. And to see them now, I mean, it's just, and I try to tell them that, because it's easy to get frustrated with it when you come in and you can't even hit anything. But it just takes a lot of reps, a lot of practice, and before you know it, they don't even think about it, and. I tell them, I'm like, I need to take a video of you guys like the first day and then show you, at the end of the season 1, season 2. And it's amazing the improvement that all of them show. And it's a wide range of skill level, even within that, but the improvement is across the board. So
again, we are speaking with Prescott High School badminton coach Bobbi Yoder. The badminton team last year finished 14-0 overall, had a great seeding in playoffs, looking to continue their success from 2020 here into 2021. There was a slight change, Coach, in your day-to-day operations. You're still the badminton coach. However, you did step down as the head varsity girls basketball coach. I wanted to ask you, what led to that decision, and we'll start there.
Well, there's definitely a lot of things that kind of went into that decision. I did take on a new role as administrative assistant here at the Prescott High School to the athletic director and the assistant principals. And that's definitely, a little more demanding, and it's harder for me to be gone because originally I helped with, a fall sport, a winter sport, and a spring sport. Just being a little more available for this is part of it. I've had my mom lives in Colorado, and she's had some health issues. So it's getting to the point where I need to make myself a little more available. So it definitely wasn't an easy decision. But, being an adult, you gotta make those decisions sometimes, and It's for the better of my family. So.
Yes, and very much so, Coach. But we'll be thinking about you for a little while here regarding, hopefully your family, your mom's health gets a lot better. Like I mentioned, our thoughts are with you for sure, Coach. But new coach steps in, Jamie Johnson. You did get an opportunity to play alongside Jamie at Bradshaw Mountain High School, and you both were a part of the Bears basketball program. I just want to ask, did you get a chance to pass off any advice to Coach Johnson, and how do you feel she fits with the program?
Well, first off, I did play with her. She graduated the year before me in 96. I graduated in 97 from Bradshaw. And, you know, I wouldn't trade that time there for anything. We both had good careers there and both went on to play basketball after that. I looked up to her as a player. So when she reached back out to me, to try to get back into coaching again, it was really a no-brainer for me. She knows the game well. She loves basketball. She loves these kids. And she's doing it for the right reasons, and wants to kind of give back, similar to what, my feelings on it. We both had a lot of coaches and people that have helped us along the way. So I think she's going to do an amazing job.
Yeah. And then, Coach, coming into here for the badminton season, first match is on August 26th, taking on Thunderbird High School, a team that the program did pretty well against last season, beating them 7-2. Again, how are you feeling going into that matchup? I know we're still a couple weeks away, but, where are you at against those Titans of Thunderbird?
Yeah, no, they surprised us a little bit going into that. There were definitely a lot more closer matches than I would have liked to seen last year. So you definitely we were sweating it a little bit at the beginning of that one. But she's got a very good program. It's definitely one that, we can't really afford to look past any of these programs. It's yet to be seen where we're at exactly, because we got a few JV kids coming up to fill in some spots. But I think overall we're going to be ready and we're going to be competitive, and I think we'll easily be a top 8 team again this year. But we definitely got our work cut out for us to get us in shape so that we are ready for them. We actually start with a scrimmage against Sandra Day O'Connor. Okay. We scrimmage them every year, and that's on the 23rd. So that'll kind of help us see where we're at and what we need to kind of clean up before we actually get to Thunderbird, but it should be a good match.
So the first scrimmage on August 23rd will be Sandra Day O'Connor, but the season officially kicks off for Coach Bobbi Yoder and her Prescott Badgers badminton team on August 26th against Thunderbird High School. Coach Yoder, thank you very much for coming onto the show, and congratulations on the new role. We're excited to see the Badgers back out on the badminton court, and hopefully we'll be talking a little bit down the line about playoff time for this program. But Coach, thank you very much for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on here. So
we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be joined by Flagstaff High School cross-country coach Trina Painter right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by Flagstaff High School cross-country coach Trina Painter. Coach Painter, welcome onto the program.
Hi, thank you. Glad to be here.
We're happy to have you, Coach. And first and foremost, congratulations on the 2020 season, not only because we had to all deal with the hurdle that is COVID-19, but also your girls program for Flagstaff High School, for the cross-country team, captured their 6th straight cross country state title. It is their 9th in the past 10 years since Coach Painter has taken over. Coach, I think first and foremost, I want to ask, how do you keep this program so consistent year in and year out?
It's actually mind-boggling to myself. I'm excited that we have this streak going, but it's just about getting good kids that believe in themselves and believe in the purpose of trying to work really hard for a championship.
Like I mentioned, a lot of success these past few years. How have you seen the program grow throughout your time coaching these Eagles?
Well, I think in the beginning, obviously my numbers have grown. We started out with a little bit of a smaller squad, and over the years it's developed, and kids have realized that not only is it a winning culture, but it's a fun culture, and they want to be a part of that. So the size of our team has grown, and I think by including the boys at a different level, when I first started, they used to basically jog behind the girls. And I was like, guys, no, I don't care how good the girls are, you shouldn't be back here. And so it's been fun to watch the men's team develop as well alongside. And I think having both teams do well and be successful really adds to the program.
Now, of course, there's been a lot of success with the program. As I mentioned, the girls' side of this program, of course, it's all one program. I don't mean to point out just one particular area. A lot of success throughout both sides of this program here. Like I mentioned, 6th straight championship, 9th in the past 10 years. Hoping to be 9 straight. I know you're looking forward to that, Coach. But speaking about goals, at this point, you've accomplished a lot. What else would you like to accomplish with this program? Is there any, youth running that you're already involved in that you'd like to see a little bit more at the high school level? A JV team development? What are your goals for this program going forward, considering all that you've done up to this point?
Well, I think overall our goal is always to do as well as we can at the state level on both sides. And then tearing down from there, we're always developing kids, obviously. If you want to continue to have successful programs year after year, you got to make sure that not just you have 5 or 7 quality athletes, but you have a lot. So as they graduate, the next ones just automatically step up and fill in those spots. So there are a couple of youth programs up here. I'm not directly involved in those, but there's definitely younger kids running. And so we just want to keep moving forward. One of our dream goals would be to qualify for the Nike Nationals one year.
Okay.
We've attended that regional competition, but Hannah Hall, Mia's sister, qualified as an individual once. And so we got a taste of that, and we'd like to try to get a team or 2 there as well one day.
Coach, you've been around cross country for a very long time. We'll talk a little bit about your involvement with cross country before you took over this program. But how have you seen the sport of cross country change throughout the years?
Cross country is kind of a pure sport, and I like that. It's kind of similar. It's gotten a little more technical, I think, a little more high tech in terms of training, the shoes, everything. The courses have gotten very fast, but I still like the really challenging courses. I feel like that's more true cross country style, and just the number of people doing it and the interest level, I think, has been kind of a change where people actually understand. They still say track when they mean cross country. So there's a little confusion there, but people are becoming more educated with the more success, not only of our local schools here in Flagstaff, but also NAU's championship.
Coach, let's talk a little bit about those track conditions. Or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say track conditions. You mentioned some. I'm doing it now too.
Sorry,
you got it in my head. No.
Sorry.
No, of course. I should say some of those. You mentioned some of the going down and looking at some of the courses and talking about some of those challenges within the courses. Are we talking like? Yeah, I don't mean to sound to make a joke too much, but are we talking like there's a pit of snakes after one turn? What are we talking about challenges? Is it altitude changes? Is it just like obstacles in the way? Do you get a chance to sort of survey where your kids are going to be running beforehand? Do you get a chance to run the course at all? Let's talk a little bit about some of that pre-meet preparation.
Right. Year to year, our meet schedule changes ever so slightly. We will repeat certain events. And so then we may have already seen the course prior, which is great. No, we don't get an opportunity to go preview prior to that, especially like last year, they changed actually, we got to see it, but you're not allowed to train on the state and sectional courses, close to the time frame. So we don't really have the budget or the wherewithal to get down to Phoenix anyway all the time to to check out all these courses. So we just go blind on most of them. Challenges, it could be anything, but typically it's the surface, whether it's sandy, whether it's dirt, whether it's concrete, it could be golf course, hard packed dirt like we have at Buffalo Park. The weather plays a huge factor, whether it's windy, we have had snow before, rain before, or for the Flagstaff kids, we're coming from cooler temperatures and we might drop down. And if we're in a later section of the state meet, it could be 90 degrees still. So it's a huge variation for us there. We have gone to a couple of fun events where there are hay bales. There was a water pit. So those are more that add to the fun factor. But for us, and my prior comment is more with some of those flat, very fast courses where it feels like a track race during cross country versus a very hilly, tough, challenging type of course where the athlete has to deal with that a little bit differently.
And we talked a little bit about some of the changes. Obviously you talked about the shoes being something that's been completely different now. So it seems like the sport has really been adapting a lot more to sort of, accommodate for some of those challenges that a few cross-country runners might run into.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So going more towards now here again, we were speaking with Flagstaff High School cross-country coach Trina Painter. Coach, the girls team graduated Allie Thurgood. She was a senior placer for you last year. You do return some state placers. One of the big ones, of course, being Mia Hall. Mia's a big one. Brianna Big Gambler coming back next season, or this season, I should say. Who else are you excited about? Any incoming freshmen, any returning players that you're excited to get back out and running very soon?
Yeah, Brooke Golightly had a phenomenal track season, and she was slightly injured at our state meet, but she had a great season last year, and I think she's going to be a key player as well. One of our young ones from last year, Mairead Kelly, is coming back. She's looking strong. Alyssa Harris is not coming back this year. She's going to focus on basketball, but we do have her younger sister joining us as a freshman. Very talented family. So, we're pretty excited. I've seen some of our other athletes have a good summer of training and really committing. McKenna Mitchell had come on really strong last year as well at the end of our season and in track. So we're excited. We're ready to go. We're going to chase another title and just see what happens.
Coach, you talk a little bit about, obviously a lot of kids training over the off season. You mentioned a couple kids putting in some good effort over the off season. So, what did you kind of leave your team with when you headed into the off season before you got started? Was there a point of emphasis, a place where you wanted to see this team, get a little bit better in, or what was sort of the focus that you told your players, hey, this is something you guys should be doing just to make sure that we're ready for next season?
For us in the summer, we just try to build some mileage and build a base, get them together as a group, get them bonding as a team, get them thinking about what they want to do goal-wise for the season. And so they've been out there running on the trails when they're not flooded, but, having a good time up here this summer. We just use it as like base building typically.
Again, of course, the boys graduate. Max Davis, who was a second place finisher at the state last year. You do return some big names, of course, Ryan Hatch, Lance Harris, Robert Parker, all coming back. Very similar question to the girls' side. Who could we see step up? Any newcomers you're excited about?
We had, again, a couple of people who should have been probably in that top 7 that were dealing with some illness or injury last year. So Spencer Lott is looking phenomenal. Troy Baker brings a lot of talent to the program. We have a young freshman named Cole Troxler who'll be probably adding to that top 10 group.
Okay.
Then we have this tremendous group of sophomore and junior boys that are just developing and getting stronger every day. And so there's a whole slew of them and it'll kind of see who rises to the top, because they're all just training machines right now and having a good time and very excited about the upcoming season.
Now, Coach, you can, of course, correct me if I'm wrong, but cross country is working with kind of a smaller roster, correct? So I want to ask, how, and I know, again, you can correct me, please. But I'm just curious, how do you sort of pick those runners, and how do you kind of decipher who's going to be on the team and maybe who needs another season or maybe just isn't ready yet?
Well, I kind of let them sort it out themselves. We say it's very black and white, and I like the fact that I'm not choosing who gets to play, but we do run a time trial in the beginning, and our top 7 qualify to run the varsity meet for the first race. And from there, we just compare times. We run the same, we might have JV and varsity races, and they're all on the same course. So we rank them after that. So the top 7. So some of my kids get bumped, if that makes sense. So 7 are varsity, and maybe number 8 has a great race and moves all the way up to number 5. So we kind of rotate through. But I think that the depth of the program is evident there, because I've got maybe, hopefully, we always knock on wood, 10 or 12 kids that could easily move into the top 7. And so we'll rotate those kids in. Obviously, it gets a little harder towards the end, but usually they sort of solidify who the top group is. And then we just have some alternates on call in case something happens.
Well, Coach, you talk about knocking on wood. In the old studio setup, I'd be able to knock on the door, but you can't really see it. So I'll knock on wood for you, and hopefully get a couple more really good competitors out there for you this year. Let's talk about the area in general. Bases Flagstaff, Coconino, your team, Northland Prep, all performed pretty well at the state competition last year. Of course, Bases Flagstaff and Northland Prep, a lot smaller of a school. Northland Prep is a 2A. I believe Bases is a 1A. And of course, Coconino and Flag are in Division 3. Just to give you an idea, of course, cross country is not in regions, it's by division. But just to give a little bit of a better idea in terms of the school size. But I want to ask, Coach, let's talk about that culture of running that's up in Flagstaff. You yourself are a runner. While training for the Olympics, you made the decision to come to Flagstaff to train in the higher altitudes. Obviously, this led you to the position here with Flagstaff High School you've had a lot of success with. So I want to ask just about that running culture up in Flagstaff. Is it the high altitude that makes people want to get outside and run? To be completely honest, it makes me want to stay inside. But, for some, maybe it's a way to take advantage of the high altitude. So let's talk a little bit, Coach, about that culture that's up there in Flagstaff when it comes to running.
Right. I moved to Flagstaff over 25 years ago. You're right, to train for the Olympic trials. And I moved here before it was the cool thing to do. But even at that point, people are starting to realize how altitude impacts endurance athletes. And it does have a positive thing. And it does make you want to throw up, actually, though, when you're running hard or uphill. Those two in particular, when you first get here, are very challenging with the amount of lactate you're producing early on. But after some time here, people used to come for just a couple of, 6 weeks, and now they're here for months. And now we've got a ton of professional athletes from all over the world, including US plus the world, moving here just to train as their training camp. For pros, they like to go high and low. So they like to, train high or sleep high and do some training lower. So they'll dip down to Sedona or Camp Verde. We don't have that luxury. We do everything up here. But it does have a positive impact on you. You're definitely developing more oxygen capacity and all that good stuff. So it's hard, but it's a good thing.
I remember when I was playing baseball and basketball back home in Southern California, we would go play up in Big Bear, Lake Arrowhead area. We play against Big Bear High School. So essentially it's like going from Mingus to Flagstaff, to give everybody else an idea. And that thin air was never fun. Playing basketball or baseball in that thin air up in Big Bear, California was always a nightmare. And you can tell that these kids were prepared for it because, like you said, Coach, they live in the element. I mean, the thin air helps you produce a little bit more oxygen so that when you're in a more oxygenated area, you're able to take in oxygen in a different way. It's a lot easier for longevity when you're running. Obviously, like I mentioned, somebody like me who doesn't like running and isn't much of a runner, that's why I play basketball, not cross country. We have a struggle with that high altitude. So, I mean, it's interesting, Coach, how high altitude training has kind of become one of the, if not the focal point of cross country. And a lot of sports are adopting that high altitude running. Basketball, for example.
Correct. I mean, there's athletes that actually have what they like a high altitude tent that they sleep in. So they may not be able to live in a higher elevation, but they understand the benefit of it. And it's definitely, one of the legal things you can do these days to try and get an advantage. We just happen to live here and train here. And so we're trying to utilize that to the best of our abilities. And I think that's why you'll see that most of the schools here have very strong endurance sports, including cross country or swimming, and track, the distance running. So it's just a little different environment here.
Coach, before we go, we mentioned your Olympic involvement a little bit earlier in the show. It is Olympic season right now, obviously. Do you find yourself checking in on the Olympics every now and then? You watching a lot of the Olympics as they're going on?
I'm addicted to it like everybody else, of course. And then, I'm fortunate enough to know some of these athletes that are over there competing. And so it's kind of like cheering on friends or your neighbors. They live around the corner and they're training on the same trails that we train on. So I'm loving the Olympics. I'm so happy that they had it finally. And these athletes get that opportunity. And I think we all feel the same for high school sports here in Arizona. These kids need it. So we're excited that we're going to have another season and hopefully a little more close to normal, as we still all kind of have to deal with COVID, but giving that opportunity to these kids and their families.
Yes, Coach, we are all very, very excited to get back. And school is officially in session. That means that we're so close to the start of the fall sports season and then going into winter and spring. And then we'll be back here once again in the summertime talking with Flagstaff High School cross-country coach Trina Painter and her dominant cross-country program. Coach Painter, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for asking me. Have a great week.
You too. And when we come back, we'll keep talking sports right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting, Jackson Hewitt Tax Services, and Gettle's High Desert Mechanical. I am joined now by AIA Executive Director David Hines. Mr. Hines, welcome back onto the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Philip.
Well, we're very happy to have you back. The AIA did hand down some recommendations for the fall season, which we will get to. One of the big reasons why we're bringing on Mr. Hines to talk a little bit about that. But first and foremost, obviously, we talked about it through all of last year. COVID-19, an absolute nightmare for everybody and anybody. What did the AIA learn about that season last year? How has it changed operations?
Well, the biggest thing is monitor and adjust. So we had to adjust multiple times, pay attention to, what the medical professionals were letting us know, and of course, evaluating cases all along. Last year. So we have learned to be as flexible as we can, understanding there are some parameters we have to try to abide by, try to communicate as well as we can to our schools, and also for them to communicate to us so that we know where they're at as far as, any type of shutdown or cancellations or postponements that they may have.
You talk about some of those shutdowns, and I know we'll get into some of the specifics about the recommendations, but, who is in charge of some of those shutdowns? Like you said, I mean, I know that the governor obviously issued his deal on the masks, saying that, of course, schools they cannot require them, but they can recommend them, of course. So if we do have that issue where somebody does come up with a positive case, I assume the answer would be, well, the schools would decide the shutdown, and is there a policy for how long the shutdown needs to be?
Well, good. So really what we have done in working through our sports medicine is we're really just going to follow CDC recommendations. So CDC has adjusted some of their recommendations over time. So we will follow those. I do know that through the recommendations that we have, obviously, if somebody is positive for COVID, then we'll follow the CDC recommendations for quarantining at that point. The only real difference is if we have a close contact. So one of the things that did a lot of shutdown last year was not that they had a lot of kids with COVID, but they were close contacts to COVID. So really, with that, the recommendation, which again, our modifications are recommendations to the school during the regular season. They will follow school and district policy. When they get to the postseason, then we will follow basically CDC policy. And the only thing really is on a close contact, each school has a COVID contact person that if an individual wants to communicate to that contact at the school and let them know that, yes, we in fact did get vaccinated and they can prove that, then, and they do not have any symptoms, then that COVID individual, the COVID contact individual could return them back to activity immediately.
Okay.
So really that's the only real difference. If not, or people don't want to communicate whether they've been vaccinated or not, fine, that's their choice. Then the quarantine will be the same for everybody.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit more specifically, or just more generally, I guess, about some of the other recommendations regarding masks for unvaccinated and vaccinated players. Can we, any real other changes that we could see, anything real dramatic? No,
we're actually, a lot of the document is basic information, mainly preventative things to be aware of, cleaning. So most of our modification that we have in place is information from last year with the kind of the two adjustments that we've just talked about, the CDC and the return to play.
Will we see any of these recommendations vary between indoor and outdoor sports when we get to that? Well, actually, we're getting close to that now.
Yeah, we are. So again, we are leaving a lot of this up to the school itself, because each of our schools are a little different in their protocols and what they are requiring or not requiring. Where we're just asking the schools to communicate that if they have contests coming up, that they communicate to the visiting school whatever the requirement or recommendation is for that school, and we'll let them do that. We are trying to have somebody besides the AIA, which we are not the medical experts, be the people to direct what we should or shouldn't do.
Right, of course, and it should be, maybe clarified a little bit more. Of course, these are recommendations from the AIA. These are not requirements from the AIA regarding masks for the upcoming season, or just COVID. I can't even think of the particular word, but just policies put into place to make sure that if things come up, that there are policies in place to sort of move around them.
And as we learned last year, Phil, that we're always going to have potential changes depending on how things are going. As we have more people being vaccinated, we'll certainly always pay attention to the numbers. And if somebody from the health department or the governor's office per se comes in at a point and says you have to do XYZ, then we'll follow that. Until then, our protocols are in place, and we really want to get back to normal as much as we can.
Right.
Whatever normal is in this day and age, because we want our kids to have the opportunity to play.
The word normal seems like the one thing we keep talking about we can't get back to whenever we talk about COVID-19. But I do want to ask too, we saw a lot of adjusting last year because of COVID-19. A lot of schools having to change their game plan if they happen to have an unfortunate COVID positive test during their season. Are we anticipating further adjustments to come? Are we anticipating a similar issues we saw last year regarding, if a team gets COVID and they have to either shut down their season or, try to race to the finish to finish their season? Where are we with sort of the varying COVID adjustments that could come up throughout the season? Any changes there?
No real changes from last year. Very similar. We do have some schools that, including their whole team, is vaccinated. So, and mainly due to them having to sit out last year multiple times. Some schools, that are trying to be proactive and try to eliminate that possibility. But we know with this Delta variant that there are going to be some times where there's probably going to have to be a shutdown by the school. And
right.
If we can make those contests up, we would love to be able to get that accomplished. Makes it easier for most every sport except football, because football only plays once a week.
Right.
And so with the protocols we have in place, again, there's a little bit of opportunity that a lot of kids don't have to sit out. But again, that's up to the situation at the school.
Right. Again, we were speaking with AIA Executive Director David Hines. We talked with Mr. Hines almost all last season regarding some of the changes that we would see during COVID. Some new recommendations have been handed down from the AIA to the schools just regarding, masks and testing and a whole bunch of things. If you want to check that out, go check out AIA online. It is the place to go for anything AIA. They've got a full description of all the recommendations if you want to go check those out. I think one of the biggest questions a lot of people have is fans. Are we again going with the rule of it's at the discretion of the schools? Have a lot of schools, maybe opted towards the fans, which we'll see if you can answer that one. But where are we with fans right now?
Well, we are making no limit with fans. We obviously, the regular season is at the discretion of the individual schools. That is their season. We kind of get involved when it gets down to postseason. Our intent is to have fans unless somebody above us tells us we can't.
Okay.
Could be a recommendation that, fans do wear masks down the line or specifically indoor. Could be a possibility. Again, we're about 2 to 3 weeks away from some of our football. Our small school football 1A is a couple of weeks away from starting, kind of depending on what their school's requirement is. So it could be a little bit all over the board, but we are kind of getting out of the mask business as far as this is what, as an AIA, we're telling you have to do. It's more of the recommendation of the CDC.
And we're seeing that a lot more, a lot more businesses and a lot more entities like the AIA are going more towards the recommendation as opposed to the requirement. It's very hard to tell people what to do, but you can heavily suggest what you would hope that they would do if they need to take the proper precautions, of course. I do want to ask, you talked a little bit about, just the enforcement of the rules during competition. Who is going to be in charge of that? I don't expect Mr. Hines to show up to every single sporting event throughout the state of Arizona, but I would assume there are some policies and things put into place as to people who, are in charge of those decisions, are in charge of enforcing those mask rules. Who are they? Is it the referees? Is it the athletic directors? Who sort of gets to decide those?
Great question. It really falls on the athletic director of the home school. They're the ones that are required to be there, or a representative or an administrator from their school. The officials, we put a lot on our officials anyway. They have a lot of things they do. We tried to incorporate a few things last year, and it's very difficult for the officials to be worrying about what's happening on the field of play or on the court, let alone try to see what everybody else is doing outside the court. So in reality, we are not making a recommendation that during play, athletes need to be in a mask or required to be in a mask. Obviously, if a student feels comfortable being in a mask, we're going to support that, and they would be allowed to do that. So really, the athletic director is going to be the one that will monitor the situation at their school when they are hosting.
Okay. what was sort of the feedback from referees last year? Did any of them sort of express any kind of any kind of advice going forward?
Well, we tried to have them pay attention and to communicate to the school, communicate to the coaches. I just think it became cumbersome for the officials. And it's really beyond their purview to be responsible for things outside of that. So we're really trying to take that off the officials' place, and the athletic director. They know the people at their schools and their community. And if it's required to have a mask, then that's their policy. And our schools will agree to follow the rules wherever they're going.
No changes in the schedule either. We're still looking at the correct dates, our normal dates to end out the fall season going into the winter.
Yes, sir. So far.
Fantastic. Well, great. Again, we were speaking with AIA Executive Director David Hines. Mr. Hines, I'd love to get a little bit more of an insight before we wrap things up as to your job a little bit. How have you been preparing for the fall season? What's sort of the start of the summer for you, and how does it end?
Well, the start of the summer was a breath that we finished the year.
Of course.
Which was a great thing. I thought our students did a tremendous job. Our coaches and athletic directors really did a great job of helping us get through that year. I know it was very cumbersome, and we had to navigate a lot, but they did a really good job. Planning, as we do during the summer, a lot of that we met with our staff and said, look, here's what we intend to do. But as we know, with last year, there are times we may have to make some adjustments. So we are a little better prepared this year to make those adjustments on the fly. And it's such a non-specific direction because we don't know where things leak. We're hoping for the best. We're hoping people do their part to be smart and to do the things that will allow our kids to compete. And so that requires, them to be cautious and pay attention. Please, let's do that for our kids. And then as we kind of go into the year, we have the plan that we're going on as we have scheduled. Obviously, we will play it by ear as we go through and start getting into competition. If we have to make any adjustments, we're just hoping that we don't get to the point of last year where the cases were so high that somebody had to step in and make determinations.
Yeah, and of course, like you said, Mr. Hines, AIA is just they're taking a lot of their cues from the CDC, and of course, things are going to change. Things are already changing now, and we have the Delta variant. We've got another variant apparently hovering around a little bit more. So, but you're right. But at the end of the day, making sure that we can return to that normalcy as much as we can is always going to be the best thing for these kids coming back from already a very hectic year. Some of them returning from that, of course, some of them getting lucky and getting to graduate, not having to deal with high school sports anymore. But for us who get to still talk about all the excitement that does come with high school sports, it's great to know that there's a lot of effort being put in place to make sure that these fantastic athletes and the staff and the parents and teachers and everybody involved make sure that this remains as normal as possible with the right precautions taken in place.
No, absolutely. And what we really want is, a lot of kids were not in school last year. There are a lot of virtual learning that was going on where we really want the kids back in school, if at all possible. We want those kids to participate in our athletics and activities. That's a important part of high school. And I would really then reach out to parents and the community members that this is a big deal for the high school kids. And we know that the NC2A is kind of making some changes with pay to play or recognizing the athletes that they can go earn money or whatever. We are different. We are not the NC2A. We're not professional sports. We are educational athletics and activities. So what we just hope is that the community, the school, the rest of their teammates come out and support the activities that we have and just push them up, all these kids, and recognize that this is a big deal for them and support them in their efforts through high school.
I believe everybody deserves an opportunity to play their first and final year of high school sports, and that's what we're trying to make happen. So I do want to ask one last question. Any positives come out of this COVID-19, Mr. Hines, whether that be inside the department or outside, just anything positive that came out of the pandemic that you guys are now implementing, maybe going forward?
Yeah, really, to tell you the truth, one of them was digital ticketing.
Okay.
So we did digital ticketing last year, no paper tickets, no cash, no things like that. Gave people an opportunity to get their tickets early or before they got to the game. And so we are going all digital. We learned that that's the best way to do business. We did not necessarily do that in the past, but we're going to be all digital. It's a great way to go. And that was something we learned. The other thing we learned that is we can be flexible. We can kind of move on the fly, and our kids are resilient. And all they want to do is have the opportunity to play, so it doesn't really matter when or where. If they can just have that opportunity, we learned that we can get it done.
What about you specifically? Anything that you kind of took away from all this?
A lot of gray hair. a lot more gray hair than I used to have. No, really, I think the big thing is our reward really at this level, at the staff level, is to be able to see the kids compete. Right. Yes, we had a lot of headaches. Yes, we had a lot of restless nights, sleepless nights, trying to determine if we were going to be able to move forward. But anytime we have the chance to be able to move forward, that's all we can ask. We want the kids to participate. We want the kids to have those opportunities. And when we can see those kids get that chance, it's all worth it for us.
Well, we are getting very, very close to the start of the fall sports season, and I'm sure this will not be the last time we talk with Mr. Hines about all these great sports here in the state of Arizona. AIA Executive Director David Hines. David, thank you very much for taking the time to get us caught up on the new recommendations handed down for this upcoming fall season.
Thank you, Phil. I appreciate being a part of your show.
Thank you. We're going to call it a show. I'd like to thank all my guests for coming on the show this week. Of course, Mr. Hines of the AIA, Prescott High School badminton coach Bobbi Yoder, staff cross country coach Trina Painter. I am Philip Catalfamo, wishing you a great rest of your week. We are so close to the start of fall sports season, and we will see you next week right here on Off the Bench.